My name is Phil Rasmussen, and I wrote a paper on generational differences in the workplace. This is my presentation to showcase the information that I gathered, and yeah, a little bit about what I did to research. I studied 5 academic journals and pulled good information from those. I interviewed 3 managers who are actively in the workforce, and then I completed a survey with 192 responses. First, a little bit of background information about the generations that are currently in the workforce. The greatest generation, it was born in 1901 to 1924. The silent generation, born in 1925 to 1945. The baby boomer generation was born 1946 to 1964. Generation X, born 1965 to 1981. Generation Y, born 1982 to 1994, other known as the millennials. Of my academic journals, I picked the 3 out of the 5 that I felt were the best. The first one, Exploring the Workplace Communication Preferences of Millennials, Journal of Organizational Culture, Communications, and Conflict. This one really narrowed down on how important it is for millennials in the workforce to actively communicate with their manager and have a communication within their coworkers. It's very important for millennials, and it's very, very much more than any of the other generations for them to feel included and feel as though the communication's open between them and their managers. The second academic journal that I put on here, Understanding the Millennial Generation, Journal of Financial Service. This journal wasn't more about how the generation felt and how they were different, but more what made up the generation, and it showed that the millennials have the highest percentage of minorities than any other generation, and that there's also 1.5 times more millennials entering the workforce now than there are any other generation. So I thought that was a pretty good fact. My third academic journal I have on here, Managing Multiple Generations in the Workplace. This one really narrowed down on all the generations, how they're different, how one generation may understand technology different than others, and how they mix. Next, my interviews. So I conducted 3 interviews, like I said earlier, with 3 managers. Some things that I pulled from these interviews that all 3 managers said, and each had in common. They said that they can really tell a technological difference between the employees of different generations. For example, the baby boomer generation has not as great communication or technological skills as the millennial generation. Each generation has good workers and has bad workers. That was said many times by all 3 of the people I interviewed, and I think it was a very good quote. Each generation has good workers and each generation has bad workers. Another thing I pulled was that life stages are huge in generations in the workforce. What's meant by that is that someone in the millennial generations just starting their life, they may just be starting a family, so they might have a different attitude than someone in the baby boomer generation who has been in the workforce already for multiple years and already has a family, maybe a grandparent. The last thing I pulled from these interviews was that all 3 managers said that they think that the most well-rounded employees have college degrees. Next, this is my first survey question that I asked. I asked everyone to explain the millennial generation in one word, and this was the results I got. From these surveys, I really narrowed down on the millennial generation because I thought there were a lot of stereotypes about millennials, and they're not thought of very fondly, and I wanted to either confirm or deny that. Here, it shows that 14% of my 192 people said something positive about the millennial generation, and 86% said something negative. My second survey, I asked people, do you feel as though you have ever been discriminated against based on your age? You hear about ageism and generational discrimination, and I was wondering if the people that I survey have actually encountered this, and 28% people said that they were discriminated based on their age, or they have felt as though they have been, and 72% said that they felt like they have not. In conclusion, like I said, every generation has good and every generation has bad employees. Managers should recognize generational differences. And effective communication between all employees is very important in the workplace.